Welcome to a Well Done Professional podcast. I am very excited today to have the president of Oktoberfest, Eric Stadler, and also one of the world's best neighbors. He happens to be my next door neighbor, which is wonderful. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to talk about Oktoberfest and a lot of the reasons behind some of the decisions that have recently been made. But before we get into all of that, why don't we start at the beginning? I don't know that everybody understands how Oktoberfest began and kind of what was the purpose around Oktoberfest. I mean, it's more than just a party to drink beer, correct?
100% correct. In all honesty, the beer portion of Oktoberfest is not the major portion of the event. I think there's so many people that might have the misconception that it's just a beer festival, and it's not whatsoever. Oktoberfest in Appleton was actually started in 1981 by the Downtown Appleton Business Retailers Association, which is now Appleton Downtown Incorporated. And they had started Oktoberfest with the mindset and the hope that they could draw more attention to the downtown, but also to nonprofits. And the reason that they wanted to do something like this, some kind of big event, was because malls were a big deal. The Fox River Mall, the Valley Fair Mall, and others were flourishing quite a bit. And so the downtowns needed a little spark, a little pizzazz, a little reminder that they were there. And this was one way of doing that, in addition to their sidewalk sales and other things that were still going on. So Oktoberfest started in that manner, but it started also mostly with the mindset to focus on the downtown businesses, but also the nonprofit organizations in the region, and basically set a stage for those nonprofits to showcase themselves, as well as to raise money, because so many nonprofits, we forget what their main mission is. And it's all different missions, but their main mission is to do good in our community. And we are so lucky to live in the community that we do, that's so engaged in everything, and has so many nonprofits that focus on so many different missions and do so many good things. So that has continued to be our mission for the past 38 years, is to stay true to showcasing nonprofits, giving them an opportunity to showcase themselves, but also to make this a major fundraiser for them, which it has been. There are many of those nonprofits that make almost $10,000 and more in just one day of that event of Oktoberfest. And so it really helps them flourish throughout the year to do the good that they do.
It's so amazing. You think about when it started, and it was just to bring people downtown. Who knew that 200,000 people would come into College Avenue, for a one-day event? I mean, it's an amazing event. So I don't know a lot about the committee, how it was formed, who's active on the committee. Can you tell us a little bit about how does one become involved in the Oktoberfest committee? Where do those individuals come from?
Well, the Oktoberfest committee members have really, who makes up that committee has changed quite a bit over the years, not just people or individuals, but also those from different walks of life. When it started with mostly downtown retailers, of course, putting their heads together with this idea. But since then, we have brought in members of the media, and myself, I work at a Wickman funeral home. So, I mean, it's not a downtown business, but the committee is consistent of and consists of individuals that just have a passion for not only the event, but the community itself and what it does, what the Oktoberfest event does for the community. So we have quite a different array of walks of life of people that bring different talents and different mindsets. What I love about the committee is that we have people that are very optimistic, some that are pessimistic, some people that are doers, some people that are more thinkers. And that is what makes it go around. And we drive each other nuts sometimes because we all have our niches that we focus on or that we're a little bit more passionate about, but we all ultimately have the same goal, and that's to make it be a successful event and have that passion for the community. So, yeah, and so it's difficult to get on the committee, because we have so many people that are longstanding members. We have Paul Schroed, who's been a member of the committee for 37 years. We have Mark Lewis, that's been a member for probably 35 or 36 years, myself for 20, 25 years, and others too that have 5, 10, 15-year membership in the committee. And so it's a lot of devotion.
That's amazing to have committee members that are that dedicated for that long. A lot of institutional knowledge too, which obviously it's been an incredibly successful event. So obviously, whatever the committee's doing, even if you get along or don't get along or challenge each other, it's working. So that's been great. So obviously, the elephant in the room. Recently, it was announced that Oktoberfest is not going to be an event on College Avenue, but it's going to be reimagined. So, in the community, there's been mixed feedback. Some people are, it's the right decision. With COVID, we just don't know. And then others are like, why would they make that decision already? Why wouldn't they wait until it gets closer to September? So, can you talk a little bit about how was that decision made, Eric?
I can definitely talk to that. I'm glad that you asked it because it is one of those big questions that people have as to wondering why and how silly to, when you've got 4.5 months to figure this out, how silly to make a decision so drastic. Do you realize as a committee how many people this affects? Yes, we do. Yes, and we had many sleepless nights over the last 3 or 4 weeks trying to decide and waver back and forth on what we should or shouldn't do. Ultimately, it came down to we would rather have ifs, ands, and buts rather than couldas, shouldas, or wouldas. And all of the information that we've been given based on the current health status of our community, the projections of what might be to come, and so on and so forth, from the health directors in the county, as well as the municipality, the city, have all given us indications that we really should be conservative with our thought as to whether or not we really can safely pull off a mass gathering event of this size. 200,000 to 300,000 people is a lot of people and can be a festering grounds for a pandemic to just flourish, right? And so we cannot put our community in that position. So that being said, we had to make a decision sooner than later. We have the luxury to have this information now so we can make that decision. In a rainout situation, we don't have that privilege to have a long projection to make a decision. If we wait, we're wasting a lot of money. We're wasting a lot of time and talent of our committee of coming up with a new idea, a reimagined idea. We also are doing a major disservice to those nonprofits. We have over 100 nonprofits that are involved in the event that benefit some way, shape, or form, whether it's a food booth they have, whether it's helping sell wristbands, whether it's a nonprofit scout group that helps with the trash and we donate to them. There's over 100 nonprofits that benefit from Oktoberfest. It would be so terrible for us to not be progressive enough in our thinking and plan ahead for them to be able to say, you know what, we don't feel we can pull this off this year in the normal fashion. We're going to come up with a different idea. We're giving you a warning, nonprofits, now that we're not going to be there to be that backbone for you this year. So you're going to have to start brainstorming and some other ideas of how you can make up that money this year. It's the prudent thing to do to be fair to those nonprofits. Now, our reimagined events this year, some people making fun of that too, saying, oh yeah, reimagine. Basically, it's a nice word for saying it's canceled. Why even bother doing anything else? Because we have a commitment to these nonprofits to do something, to help them continue to showcase themselves, to put even $2 in their bank. I don't care what it is. We're going to do something to help them showcase themselves and to hopefully make them some money this year. And the other thing too is the planning of an event like this does not just happen overnight. It starts the moment the last garbage truck walks off the avenue each year.
Well, and that's what I was thinking is, I don't know that everybody always thinks about the magnitude of planning because it happens every year and it happens like clockwork. I think what gets lost is the fact that, like you said, from the minute the last one is done, the next one begins. Was some of the decision, Eric? I mean, tough decisions obviously have a lot of things that you have to look at. I would assume that there's a lot of expense that would have had to have happened now and that money could have been lost had you had the event in September and or we had to cancel it closer to. So what were some of those tough decisions that you looked at that said, you know what, this is not going to go favorably for us?
That's a very smart question. And you know, Appleton's Oktoberfest and License to Cruise, the car show the night before, are both programs or events of the Fox Cities Chamber of Commerce. Another not prudent way to deal with money is making a decision on the flip. We just couldn't do it. There are so many costs that go into getting an event prepped to occur. Porta potties, deposits, deposits for an expensive beer. The beer distributor, for crying out loud, has to put in order to Germany for the Spaten beer that comes to Oktoberfest. They have to put that months in advance to Germany. Imagine that. I mean, we have to wait for that to come over on a boat. I mean, so it again takes time. It's a waste of money to not make a decision sooner than later. Porta potties, the bands that we still have to pay in a rainout situation, we're passing checks over to them even if they don't play a note. We have the privilege now to have a warning that it most likely will not be able to happen. And ultimately it comes down to, will we even be able to get a permit to have the event? Will the city sign off on that permit to allow us to have that event? If they don't feel it's going to be safe, we can't do it either. So it's not, and I'm not putting the blame on the city by any means. This is not this was our decision. And the city, I have to give them a great deal of credit. Kurt Egbrecht, the city health director, is the epitome of a professional and a man that cares a great deal sincerely about the health of this community. He provided us with a lot of facts, a lot of history of other pandemic situations, and the situations that are happening around the world, but also when we really what sparked us to finally call an emergency meeting as a committee and say, you know what, I think we need to cancel or do something else, was when Munich, Germany announced that they were canceling their Oktoberfest. In Munich, Germany, Germany's Oktoberfest is the same time frame ours is, at the end of September. Very few days of October do they have. It was so clear that if a worldwide event of that size was taking it this seriously, we needed to do the same thing for our people in our own backyard. And so when I talked to Kurt Egbrecht about that at the city, he had said, Eric, that's a perfect example. I brought it up to him and he said, it's a perfect example because they are not having near the outbreak that in Germany that what we are here in the United States. So they're having less of an outbreak and they made that decision. We had to do what we had to do.
Right. So I think, like you said, people are kind of teasing you about the word reimagined. And I don't want you to give away any secrets, but can you give the listeners just kind of an idea of what you guys are thinking as it relates to a reimagined Oktoberfest?
Sure. I'll start with Friday night, License to Cruise, the car show. That has been going on. This year would have been our 30th annual License to Cruise car show. We'll probably postpone that 30th annual and make that a bigger year next year. We were going to have Pontiac as being the feature vehicle this year, but that's probably going to go on the wayside so they can be well featured next year. What I would envision us doing is some kind of cruise event this year, maybe a processional cruise. We are in some very serious discussions right now on how we can make that happen in a very grand fashion and how we can also turn that event into giving to nonprofits. And the ideas that we've got floating around right now are very solid. Not enough that I can tell what they are, but I can tell you once we have some I's dotted and T's crossed, we'll be talking more about them very soon. I would guess we'll be starting to talk about those things in the later part of June, somewhere around there.
When you think about the not-for-profits, can you give a rough estimate how much Oktoberfest donates, gives to the not-for-profits, how much that total number is on a yearly basis?
Yeah. Well, Oktoberfest, being that we are as big as we are of an event, we have been very fiscally smart, which has been good. We do have enough money typically in our back pocket that if we have a couple of rainouts in a row, that we should be able to sustain ourselves as an event, which not all events are in that position. So we are very lucky that way. That doesn't mean just because we have money in our back pocket that we can be foolish with it. But because we are that financially stable, we also have been able to do a grant program each year where we give back $50,000 in grants to various nonprofits and other organizations throughout the Fox cities. And we have pretty stringent guidelines or criteria, if you will, for that grant program. But $50,000 annually we give back. But that is a very small amount in comparison to what those 100 different nonprofits that I mentioned before are making on the Avenue when they are doing having a food booth, and they're making thousands and thousands of dollars for their organization, the garbage pickup volunteers and so on. So the impact that it has to the nonprofits in the region, I would bet borders $100,000 annually. But then there's also the economic impact that it has on the businesses. Those bars and restaurants are packed on Oktoberfest and licensed to cruise days and night. The shops that choose to be open on those days are doing very, very well. The hotels are doing very well. My in-laws have been coming since I've known my wife for the last 20 years, 15, 20 years. They have been coming every single year and bringing friends with them from Fond du Lac with 3, 4, 5 hotel room stays. So and I know they're not the only ones. So it has a great economic impact, non-profitly, but also for profit.
Right. So thinking about, I mean, Oktoberfest really runs, not just the committee, but it really runs on volunteer labor. Corporations are involved from a sponsorship perspective. So obviously this is for the community. It isn't, like you said, it's not just a beer party. This is truly a community event. What would you say to the people who volunteer or the corporations? How could they help at this point with the Reimagined? What are some things that they can start thinking about how they can still volunteer, they can still sponsor, and start thinking about that as we get closer and closer to the Reimagined date?
So the role of the volunteer this year is going to be completely different than in-person pouring beer, serving beer, selling wristbands, whatever the case might be. Volunteerism is going to change drastically just for this one year, hopefully. And it takes over 1,000 volunteers each year to put Oktoberfest on in Appleton. What we have said in discussions with our volunteer committee is that we need to have our volunteer committee keep the volunteer database that we have, those that have volunteered in the past, keep them engaged, keep them a part of being in the know as to what's going on. And the volunteers that we've had in the past and here going forward, the way they can help this year is to help by spreading the word of what's happening and what's going to happen. So when we make announcements, share that Facebook post. When there are updates, share that Facebook post or that Instagram post or whatever the case might be. Tell your friends and family when you get that news. And I would imagine we'll probably try to keep those volunteers in the know quicker than the public so that they feel like they're a part of the team, if you will. Because they are a major backbone to the event. And it sounds so cliche of, many times you hear people say, we couldn't do it without you. I couldn't do it with, there's no cliche about it. There is no way we could pull that event off, Appleton's Oktoberfest, without the 1,000 volunteers that we have between Friday and Saturday. No way, shape, or form. And that's so unique because there are not many other events that operate that way with that many volunteers. Just goes to prove how awesome of a community we have, that people want to band together and pull it off like we do each year.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. I mean, we volunteered last year as an organization, and it not only is it a great thing to do, but it's a ton of fun. So we had a great time doing it. Being this is the Oktoberfest is part of the Fox Cities Chamber of Commerce. How do you see the chamber's role in the Reimagined going forward? What will be their involvement with all of it?
Well, marketing. Emily, who does a great job with the marketing already for the Fox Cities Chamber, she's actually a part of our committee more than she has been in the past, so she can stay in the know and also share her ideas. The chamber is going to continue to be as much a part of it as they have been for the last number of years. In the beginning years, the only reason the chamber was involved in many years ago, it was an Appleton Town Business Retailers Association event. It wasn't a chamber event. But at that time, we needed the chamber for insurance reasons. They had insurance policies and that we could piggyback on. And so that's how we kind of, in that day, many years ago, got partnered with the chamber. And then it got to the point that we needed somebody to help with admin things and so on. And so the chamber, then at some point, it just made sense that the chamber took over the event, and it became the License to Cruise and Oktoberfest became events of the Chamber of Commerce. And so the role of the chamber has changed a great deal to not only admin work, but really encompassing the whole event. So I think the chamber's role is going to be continuous. And you know, I gotta say this too. Out of all the presidents or CEOs of the Fox Cities Chamber of Commerce, Becky Bartosik has got to be the best one that we have ever worked with. She has been the most hands-on, the most passionate. She cries with us when we have challenges. She is frustrated when we have challenges, but she is our biggest cheerleader. And just, she gets it. I'm just so pleased to work with her. She does a great job representing the community. Her heart really bleeds for the businesses in our community. And she has had many sleepless nights over this time, not just with the Oktoberfest, but more so with her duties as a chamber and keeping the vibrancy of that organization so that we can continue to build the business community. So going back to your question, the chamber's role isn't going to change much at all. It's only going to strengthen and become more involved in keeping the event fiscally responsible.
Well, and we're very proud of Becky too. We were thrilled to have placed her there, and she's done amazing work. I do also think that she's a really great champion for volunteers, because those of us that are on the board, it really wasn't a choice if we wanted to volunteer. We were sort of voluntold. But we were all happy to do it, and it was a lot of fun to have all the board members out there selling beer and just having a good time. So one of the things I love about my neighbor Eric is you are probably the most optimistic man I've ever met. So tell me, what has you excited? You know, you can look at everything with COVID one of two ways, and I tell my team this: we can either be part of the solution or we can be part of the problem. We all want to be part of the solution. How do we help people to just get through this in a really positive and optimistic way? So knowing you're my eternal optimist, what parts of this have you excited?
Well, now all of it. And here's why. I'm over the emotion of, and believe me, there's a lot of emotion. I'm over the emotion of the sadness and whatnot of Oktoberfest not happening in its regular fashion. And it was really, I'll be honest with you, as I said before, I work in the funeral service. It was like going through the grieving process. The sadness, the denial, the anger, and so on. But I'm over it all, and I'm so excited because, as one of our volunteer committee members, Willie Harrison, had said to me, you know, he said, when I was really frustrated one day, he said, Eric, this is actually, I think, going to be really good. He said, yeah, are we going to not make as much money for the nonprofits, or you know, are we not going to be able to put a big party on and see all, you know, have you know, what turns into being a family reunion and a class reunion and all these other things downtown Appleton? Yeah, it's a bummer in that regard. However, this is forcing us to reimagine the event, and that's why we ended up putting that word on the moniker of the event this year, because we are reimagining it. It's forcing us to come up with some new ideas that I guarantee we're going to incorporate into this year's event, because we have to come up with something else. But we're going to keep it a part of the future years too. Some virtual things that we probably wouldn't have done before. We're going to end up, you're going to find that we're going to probably tie in the nonprofits with the business sector somehow. We're going to figure that out, and how maybe that can be a marriage. And I'll bet you that that's not only going to happen this year, it's going to happen in the future. We're going to come up with some things that maybe it's not just a 1 day or 2 day event this year or in future years. I bet that you'll see that we're going to come up with some ideas that we can actually progress the event a little bit and take it over a few weeks rather than just a couple of days, which is going to, in the long run, it's going to make up for the money that we don't make this year and make a huge impact in the years to come. So it is a bummer this year. It's a real bummer, but I'm excited that it's forcing us to be a little more innovative and freshen things up, and really shows the true colors of the team, I think. And who can stick together is going to survive together. And that's where I think we can teach something to the community and the naysayers, and hopefully change their mind and make them optimists as well.
Yeah. I would tell you that, while change is hard and nobody loves change, what we're seeing is some of the best ideas, some of the most engaging events, and just connectivity of getting people back to families, and all of those wonderful things are resulting from this. So if we really look hard, I think everybody can really see that this will. It's going to be maybe different this year, but a lot, like you said, a lot of really great things are going to come out of this, and you'll have some new ideas for future years. I so appreciate your willingness to talk about a tough subject, because obviously people are out there and they're talking about it. And if you need anything, I know that people can reach out to you. And we're just excited, Eric, to see what it is as a community, what you're going to put together for us. So good luck to the committee, and thank you guys all for your time and service in helping the not-for-profits in the community, because the not-for-profits make the rest of the community stronger.
And there's no doubt of that. Thank you.
Take care.